This video was brought to you by NordVPN. Just a few days ago, an Israeli ground invasion of Gaza looked imminent. The IDF had mobilized 360,000 reservists, nearly as many as before the Yom Kippur War, and satellite imagery showed a buildup of hundreds of tanks and armored vehicles around Gaza's northern border. However, we're now nearly 2 weeks on from Hamas's brutal attacks, and a ground invasion doesn't look likely to happen until next week at the earliest, given that the US President Joe Biden arrived in Israel late on Wednesday. Israeli officials have also told the media that a combination of factors, including bad weather, the prospect of retaliatory action by either Hezbollah or Iran, and the absence of a plan for what happens after the invasion, have all conspired to make the Israeli military establishment a bit more hesitant about the ground invasion than previously. Nonetheless, a ground invasion is definitely still possible, not least because it would also be politically difficult for Netanyahu to pull back at this point. Much of his coalition and the Israeli public won't accept anything less, and it would put him under massive pressure to resign if he didn't. Netanyahu also promised the Israeli public that he would, quote, obliterate Hamas, and other members of the Israeli government have made similarly hawkish sounds, with the Israeli defense minister telling the Wall Street Journal that the Israeli response would be, quote, powerful and for forever. So in this video, we're going to take a look at what a ground invasion might look like if it happens, and whether it can truly succeed. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So let's get straight into it. What would a ground invasion actually look like? Well, the fact that the IDF have told Palestinians living in the north of Gaza to flee to the south suggests that the offensive would be focused on Gaza City and its surrounding suburbs, which have also seen the most intense bombing recently. A War Cabinet document, reportedly leaked to the Cannes public broadcaster, also states that the operation's objectives included both toppling the Hamas government and destroying its military capabilities, and completely removing the terror threat from the Gaza Strip. Now, if the IDF really wants to do this, i.e. topple Hamas, then it implies an assault through all of Gaza City. Obviously, we don't know the IDF's exact plans, but the consensus seems to be for a two-pronged attack, with one grouping going west from the now-defunct Nahal Oz crossing to essentially cut Gaza into two and prevent Hamas from escaping south, and another grouping going south from the Erez crossing into Gaza City and its surrounding suburbs. Now, most of the bombing so far has occurred in three places: Beit Hanum, northeastern Gaza, and the eastern suburb of Shuja'iyya, which suggests that these will be the first places that the IDF actually attacks. In doing so, the IDF will probably rely heavily on armored brigades and tanks. In fact, for the first time since the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 1982, the entire armored corps have been called up, which allegedly includes over 1,000 main battle tanks and significantly more armored personnel carriers. There's a chance it also involves an amphibious assault as well, given that the IDF said on Saturday that it was planning a, quote, integrated and coordinated attack from the air, sea, and land. But it seems more likely that Israeli gunboats will just provide support with artillery and tracer bullets, as they did in Israel's invasion of Gaza in 2014. Now, this invasion is likely to proceed in stages, both because this allows the IDF to react to anything that Hezbollah or Iran does without overcommitting in Gaza, and because taking the entirety of Gaza City, which is 45 kilometers squared and had a pre-war population of about 600,000 people, will probably take months. For context, a senior Israeli security advisor told the New York Times that some Israeli military leaders that it might take as long as 18 months of door-to-door arrest operations to fully purge the city of Hamas militants. So that's what the invasion would look like. On to the second part of the video. Can it succeed? Well, there are reasons for the IDF to be optimistic. Firstly, it enjoys a massive numerical superiority. The IDF has mobilized 360,000 reservists on top of the 170,000 or so troops that they already have, which means that they've got well over 500,000 troops ready. While not all of these will be combat soldiers, and a significant number will have been deployed either to the north to deter Hezbollah or in Israel's interior to deal with ethnic violence within the country, it's still way more than the 30,000 or so Hamas fighters estimated to be in Gaza City. Conventional military doctrine suggests that attackers usually need to outnumber their opponents 3-1 in order to overwhelm a defensive position. And this is a force ratio that Israel can easily afford. It's also worth saying that the IDF trains specifically for these sorts of urban combat missions, and has some of the most advanced military technology in the world. However, there are perhaps equal reasons for the IDF to be wary. While the IDF might enjoy numerical superiority, Ukraine has demonstrated that this just isn't enough in certain urban environments. Despite having at least 4 times as many ground troops as Ukraine, Russia was unable to achieve its strategic aims, and the US now believes that the appropriate force ratio for modern urban warfare is more like 6-1, and can even rise as high as 15-1 in certain contexts. Now, this is obviously an upper limit, but Gaza City might be one of the most challenging urban environments imaginable, for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's remarkably dense. Parts of Gaza City have population densities as high as Manhattan, despite lacking the towering skyscrapers. Now, the IDF even realized that this was going to be an issue back in 2014, when they lost 13 elite troops during a brief incursion into one of the most densely populated parts of Gaza City. Now, this might not sound that bad, but the IDF only escaped by resorting to massive and indiscriminate artillery, which landed within 100 meters of the IDF contingent and hit a significant number of Palestinian civilians, provoking international outrage. The second reason that Gaza City is particularly difficult here is that Hamas has developed an extensive tunnel network under the city. The Gaza tunnel network was actually originally an economic project designed to facilitate trade in the early years of the blockade. These days, however, Hamas uses the network predominantly for military purposes, and claims to have created some 500 kilometers of tunnels running as deep as 30 meters below the surface. This makes things much harder for the IDF for a couple of reasons. It limits the efficacy of artillery, it allows Hamas to have ground troops pop up anywhere without warning, and it could force the IDF into uncomfortable, underground infantry combat, essentially nullifying their armor advantage. Again, Ukraine provides a good case study here. Tunnel networks in Mariupol's industrial zone, which is only 10 kilometers square and nowhere near as dense as Gaza, allowed a few thousand Ukrainian defenders to hold out against Russia for over 80 days, despite Russia enjoying an 8-1 manpower advantage and overwhelming artillery and armor superiority. All in all, a ground invasion would be a real risk for the IDF, which perhaps partially explains their current wariness. With news like this constantly filling the headlines, it's easy to feel like the world is getting less safe. Fortunately though, when it comes to your digital safety, NordVPN has your back. It's an unfortunate reality that online scams and phishing attacks are on the rise at the moment. With us constantly bombarded by emails from our banks, social media accounts, and annoying newsletters we forgot we even signed up to, it's easy to click the wrong thing. And one weak link can compromise security and bring things crashing down. With the protection of NordVPN though, you can use their threat protection features to identify potentially suspicious links. And even if you did reach a suspicious website, NordVPN's data encryption tools will protect against a number of other attacks, including malicious man-in-the-middle breaches. Even if things do go wrong though, NordVPN's dark web monitoring service is always scanning your details and passwords, and can actively notify you before you even notice something has gone wrong. Plus, if you sign up now for a 2-year plan using our link, you'll not only get a massive discount, but you'll also get 4 extra months totally free. Now, we've been told that sometimes when people hear us talk about NordVPN, they just open up a new tab and start searching, but don't actually use our link. Now, I'm certainly glad that they get to use the service regardless, but you only get the discount and you only support the channel if you use our link. So if you're trying to improve our journalism by signing up to Nord, then use our link when you do. That way, you'll get their great service at a discount and support TLDR.